Adaeze was not always bitter. There was a time she laughed easily, when her eyes sparkled at the smallest things. Rain on the roof, fresh yams in the market, her husband's quiet jokes at night. In those early years of marriage, she and her husband, Obinna, would sit outside their small mud house and talk about the children they would have. "We'll have a boy first," Obinna would say, smiling. Adaeze would shake her head. "No, a girl. She'll look like me." They would laugh, but the years passed. 1 year became two, two became five, and still, no child. At first, people were kind. "Don't worry," the older women told her. "It will come." They gave her herbs to drink, roots to boil, leaves to bathe with. She followed every instruction carefully, holding on to hope like something fragile. But hope, when stretched too long, begins to break. Soon the whispers began. "She has stayed too long without a child. Maybe her womb is cursed. Maybe she did something in her youth." Adaeze heard everything. In the market, conversations would suddenly change when she approached. At gatherings, women shifted slightly away from her, pulling their children closer. Not out of fear, but something worse. Discomfort. The men were quieter, but their silence carried judgment. Even Obinna began to change. He didn't insult her. He didn't shout. That would have been easier to bear. Instead, he grew distant. He came home later. He spoke less. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, Adaeze would wake up and find him staring at the ceiling, saying nothing. One evening, after a long silence between them, he finally spoke. "People are talking," he said quietly. Adaeze didn't respond. "They say I should take another wife." Her chest tightened, but she forced herself to remain still. "And what do you say?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Obinna hesitated. "I don't know anymore." That was the night something inside Adaeze cracked. She tried everything after that. She traveled to distant villages to see healers. She spent the little money they had on sacrifices. She prayed until her voice became hoarse. Nothing changed. Her body remained empty. Her home remained silent. Until the night she met the old woman. It happened on her way back from the stream. The sky was already dark, and the path was almost empty. The old woman seemed to appear from nowhere. "You carry a heavy sorrow," the woman said. Adaeze stopped. Something about her voice, calm, certain, made it impossible to walk away. "I have no child," Adaeze replied simply. The old woman studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "There are places," she said, "where the line between this world and the other is thin." Adaeze frowned. "A shrine lies deep in the forest beyond this village. Not many know of it, and those who do stay away." "Why are you telling me this?" Adaeze asked. "Because you are desperate," the old woman said plainly, "and desperate people do what others fear." Adaeze's heart began to beat faster. "They say," the woman continued, lowering her voice, "that children who are not meant to stay in this world are kept there, guarded." A long silence followed. "If one were to take such a child," the old woman added, "it could become theirs." Adaeze swallowed hard. "What is the price?" The old woman's eyes darkened slightly. "Everything has a price," she said. "The question is whether you are willing to pay it." Adaeze did not sleep that night. She thought of Obinna, of the whispers, of the empty space in her arms. By midnight, her decision was made. The forest was thicker than she remembered. Each step felt heavier, as though the ground itself resisted her. The night was unnaturally quiet. No crickets, no birds, only the sound of her breathing. Then she saw it, a small hut standing alone, covered in markings she did not understand. The air around it felt wrong, still, and then a baby's cry, soft at first, then clearer. Adaeze's heart pounded. She stepped closer. The door was slightly open. Inside, the child lay on a mat, wrapped in cloth. No one else was there. For a moment, Adaeze hesitated. "This is not right," a voice inside her whispered. But another voice, louder, sharper, answered, "You deserve this." With trembling hands, she picked up the baby. The crying stopped instantly. The child opened its eyes and looked straight at her. Adaeze felt a chill, but she ignored it. She turned and walked away. The moment she crossed the edge of the shrine's clearing, the wind rose suddenly. The trees began to sway violently. Leaves scattered into the air. Then came the whispers, faint at first, then louder. "You have taken what is not yours." Adaeze broke into a run. Branches scratched her arms. Roots threatened to trip her, but she held the child tightly and kept moving. She didn't stop until she reached home. At first, everything seemed fine. The villagers were shocked, but curious. "Where did the child come from?" they asked. "A distant relative," Adaeze lied. Some believed her, others didn't. But no one questioned too deeply. At last, Adaeze had what she always wanted. A child to hold, a reason to smile, a way to silence the whispers. Even Obena softened. Slowly he began to laugh again. For a while, it felt real. But then things began to change. The child rarely cried, it barely slept. And its eyes, they were not the eyes of a baby. Sometimes Adaeze would wake up in the night and find the child sitting upright, staring at her in the darkness. Watching. Milk would spoil overnight. Food lost its taste. Neighbors stopped visiting. One evening, as Adaeze held the child close, it spoke, softly, clearly. "Why did you take me?" Adaeze froze. Her entire body went cold. You are my child," she whispered. The child tilted its head slightly. "I am not yours." That was when the knocking began. Slow, heavy, unnatural. The door shook as if something powerful stood outside. Then a voice, deep, echoing, not human. "Return what you took, or take its place." Adaeze fell to the ground shaking. Tears streamed down her face. She looked at the child, the one thing she had wanted all her life. And in that moment, she understood. This was never a gift. It was a test. At dawn, villagers saw her walking toward the forest, barefoot, silent, carrying the child. No one followed. No one called her back. She disappeared into the trees, and she was never seen again. After that day, the shrine remained untouched. But sometimes at night, villagers say you can hear two voices crying in the forest. One of a child, the other of a woman who finally understood the cost of her desire. If you enjoy the story and want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel at Africa Folktales, Movies and Storytelling.